If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Let's go to the IV Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard hotline and bring in our next guest.
Tovah Martin, in her constant, undying pursuit of all things garden-related, Tovah gets her hands dirty both outside and indoors. She's a perennial, heirloom vegetable and cottage gardener of fanatical proportions, and she's accredited by NOFA as an organic land care professional. Beyond the garden outdoors, she has decades of experience with tropicals, in windowsills, greenhouses, and otherwise. She's an author and a blogger. Welcome to the program, Tovah.
Hello. Good morning.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join Holly, myself, and all of our listeners on the program to educate us all.
Thank you.
Now, you write about how you used to get rid of your moss. It drove you crazy. You were like, to heck with this stuff. But now you embrace it. Why is moss a great addition to any landscape?
Well, the beauty of moss and it's just part of an awakening that I had that something like moss, it's something we sort of saw. People told us we should remove it, and suddenly I realized, well, wow, this is this beautiful carpet that is emerald green throughout a long period of time. It's the first thing that you notice in the spring. It's the last thing to go in the fall. It doesn't need to be mowed. So it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing in your garden.
And what we have learned about moss, we watched some outdoor shows and some survival stuff. It's a great filtration system in order to purify, well, not necessarily purify, but clean water before it goes back into streams that may have some levels of unhealthy toxicity in it.
It is sponge-like, yes.
Okay. Now, for an everyday gardener, what do we most commonly forget to do in the garden?
Well, what I found is that what I often did was run in and just tackle jobs. I did chores, and I forgot to really look, really enjoy the garden, really get what I could get out of the garden. And it's, it's every sense. Once I started plugging in sense by sense, and really experiencing the garden, I realized that it had so much to give me. So what we forget to do, I think, is we forget to really appreciate this beautiful habitat that we've created. And it gives to us on all levels, but it's not only us. It's also all the insects that it nurtures and all the birds that feed off it. It's a really big thing, and once you realize that, it's just so fulfilling.
Well, and you're right, taking time to look at what you've done, and we're in a fast-paced world. Get in, get out. I got to do this. I got to do that. There's no time to appreciate what you've done. And what I have learned and to do is whenever we go to the garden and work in the garden, I'll take photographs of things that I think are like, why am I taking a picture of this? But I'll go back and look at it later and realize, look at that, look at this. I didn't see this originally. And you understand more on a smaller level how detailed and how pretty things are, and you understand more about it than just a rush in, rush out type of thing.
Exactly, and I think you really got the nub of it. If when you take a picture or something like that, you really look at it, and again, you really look. But that's just one sense. There's so much to smell, just smelling. It's autumn now. Smell the difference in the air. Smell the leaves. Smell the mushrooms. Just smell the air, the wood smoke floating on it. It's also touching it. It's also on all levels. It's listening to the wind, It's listening to the bird song.
Definitely. Now, what is the importance of designated walk areas in the garden?
Well, the way you move through a garden is so important. You're sending a message not only to your own feet, but to visitors that come, guests in your garden. You're saying, walk slowly. If you put maybe paving stones far apart, or if you're having one, path, then you're saying, you can kind of walk quickly here, or maybe there's a crossroads in the garden. You're saying, stop here, look around before you turn the bend.
Right, and also, if we look back and remember a traditional garden, if we were growing up, no matter what you did in that traditional exposed soil garden, there's a certain amount of walking that you have to do. So if you can designate specific areas where those are always going to be transition passages, you can not really ruin the soil in other areas and still take in what you talked about, looking and exploring and understanding what's going on.
I think you're so right. I'm in an awful lot of gardens because I write for magazines, and boy, it's such a difference when somebody has a designated area that is convenient to go from one place to the next.
And yeah, and you're not getting tangled up in vines and everything else. They've got it's planned out to make it easy for you to transition in a garden, but also it's very, very functional as well. It's a controlled chaos type of thing.
It is, and I always so value the best route between two spaces, and also not doing dead ends.
Exactly.
Now, many people can see this time of year as ugly and brown, and you kind of touched on this before, or they can see it as picturesque and colorful. What are some ways that you embrace the beauty of fall?
Autumn is, brown is beautiful when you look at it. But the beauty of autumn is that it actually is this wonderful progression. And every day is so different than the day before. When I was working on this book, The Garden in Every Season, I really noticed the difference between one day and the next. One day something is kind of turned a little blush. The next day it's on fire. And you can actually become a better gardener to fill in this season by looking. You can really be more, really think about, a little bit more orange right there would really pop, So that's really looking at the season.
Right, and let's talk about your new book here. You've got it broke down in a unique way that I've not seen other books. You've got it broke down in all 4 seasons, and then in those seasons, you've got it broke down to 5 different categories of sight, smell, sound, touch, and taste. It's a very unique thing, and you go over each one of those individually based on the season that we're covering and talking about in the book.
Right, and, again, that was part of the awakening that when I started plugging in, I sort of had to really consciously think, okay, today I am going to feel my way around the garden. And, when you start doing that, when you really conscientiously think that way, then you really get so much more out of the garden. So, and a lot of the readers do it season by season. They say, okay, it's the beginning of autumn. I'm going to do this as sort of a discipline, and they'll read the chapters and read the essays, and then they'll go out and do it themselves, and they will see so much more and really write their own dialogue too.
Now, with how large is the garden that you garden in?
I call my place Furthermore. I'm in New England, and I have 7 acres. And I have all kinds of gardens. I have a cottage garden in front of the cottage, and I have perennial gardens, and I have a meadow and a vegetable garden, berry garden, pasture for the goats, a huge meadow. So I have a lot of different habitats.
Where did the name come from? How did you come up with that name?
Furthermore, when I write, and I've been writing ever since I was a kid, I use that word a lot, but it's also, indicative of being a gardener who just never sees the end of, project. There's always more acreage to tackle.
Yeah, I grew up on a farm, and that's kind of the same thing. There's never an end point. There's always, we just got to do something else, and we've ran out of time today. We talk about your book and the four all throughout the seasons. Do you have a particular season, or is it like saying that it's hard picking which child is your favorite child? Is there one that stands out to you? You embrace more than others?
Well, it's really I'm so fickle. It's the season I'm in right at that moment, and again, you begin to see more about it. Even winter. I would have thought winter was really a downtime. Well, I no longer think of winter as a downtime at all. It's when you see the contours of your land, and it's when you see the beautiful structure of the bare naked trees, and you really can learn a lot about, as a gardener, from plugging in winter as well. Even, the crisp air, winter air. Everything, the smell of snow, and you can smell it. It's when you're not all muffled up in mufflers, but there you go. Every season is so exciting.
I would have to agree about winter, especially right before it snows. There's like this change in the air, and I feel like you can kind of
relaxing, calm.
Right, like you kind of smell the snow and feel it coming.
You really can, and one of my favorite sound of silence.
Mm-hmm.
Right after snow and no one can get out yet. I love that sound.
You talked about earlier, whenever we want to slow down and look in the garden, I'm reminded by a gardener who we interviewed several years ago on a program, and he said what you want to do is you want to just find a spot in your garden and lay down flat on the ground and look up. Just look up. You will be amazed of what you didn't know was there. That's
really good advice. I'm going to try that one.
Well, Tovah, where can we find your new book at? Where was the best locations for our listeners to travel to?
Well, you can get the Garden in Every Sense and Season really wherever books are sold. You can get it online. You can get it at your local bookstore. It's published by Timber Press, and you can also find me on my Facebook page, which is PlantsWise by Tovah Martin, or go to my website, tovahmartin.com, and I lecture all over the country, so hope to see you all sometime.
Well, Tovah, we greatly appreciate you taking time, joining us on the program, and educating Holly, myself, and all of our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Absolutely. Thank you for checking out the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. For more, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for full-length in-studio video and podcast replay of Season 1. Season 2 underway and added weekly. Tweet us at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG to be part of the program.